Hey, welcome back. Pull up a chair, get yourself a drink. We're in for a real treat this time in After Hours. We got my 3 personal favorite deaths in the entire game and the many deaths of Laura Bow. We're taking a close-up look at Laura's pathologically non-confrontational personality, and we'll be taking a closer look at Gertrude Dijon, since there's not really any point in doing that in future updates. Alright, let's get started. Alright, this first one is the least fair death in the entire game. It is ridiculous. You might have noticed me sort of moving around the outside edges of the main hallway in the bottom floor of the mansion. There is a reason for that. Let's take a look here what happens if we just try to walk down the main area. Yep, that's right. The chandelier falls and crushes us to death. Now think about this for a second. This is the main thoroughfare. The mansion is the place where the most things happen in the game, and this is the connecting area between the 2 main areas of the mansion, the first floor and the second floor. This is the most traveled area in the entire game, so effectively what they have done is to make the center, or the main area of the main thoroughfare in the entire game a huge death trap. This is just so mind-bogglingly stupid that I'm actually breaking the 1 to 5 margin and giving this a 0 in terms of fairness. It at least earns itself a 1.5 in terms of atmosphere, though. The mansion is old, it's falling apart, and we know that. I'm not really sure that is best shown off by having the chandelier fall, but it at least makes some kind of sense. I've complained about this one a little bit in the main videos already. You get an oil can, and you've read a note that says Lancelot is going to salute one final time before the night is over or something, and this is part of the side quest. So, because it specifically says that all the joints in Lancelot are rusted, if you look at the suit of armor, you might think to make him salute one final time, what you actually have to do is to oil the arm so that you can move his arm up. Well, Laura doesn't really know to do that. All you can do is tell her to oil arm or oil helmet. That's the only 2 parts that she understands. So let's see what happens if we oil the arm. There she goes, not oiling the right arm, but whatever. And boom, you are chopped in half. That thing must have been the heaviest axe. I mean, just gravity pulling it down just sliced through your entire body. That is the second most unfair death in the game, in my opinion, and so it gets a 1 in terms of fairness. Not quite as bad and stupid as the chandelier one, but still pretty bad. And it also, unfortunately, gets a 1 in terms of atmosphere. This doesn't really accomplish anything. It's just something wacky, I think, that they wanted to put in to make sure that you knew to oil the helmet or something. I don't know. It doesn't add much, and it's kind of unfair. So 1 in both categories. Now let's go ahead and balance that out with what I consider to be the most fair death in the entire game. If you head to the right side of the island, you can see that there's a lot of alligators just sort of lying around in the swamp, and one of them will leave his little island and come and just sort of stare at you. Well, it's possible to walk towards him, and if you thought anything besides that was going to happen, I have no idea how your process of reasoning works. I'm actually going to go ahead and give this a 5 in terms of fairness, because we just walked right into an alligator, so I'm not really sure what we thought was going to happen. And I'm also going to grant it a 5 in terms of atmosphere, because I think, it adds to the idea that this is sort of a deadly island cut off from everything else, and that you cannot get out through the swamp, even if you want to at any point in time during the night. So this is maybe one of my favorite deaths. It's fair, it's atmospheric, and it's not frustrating at all. One of the weird things that I've mentioned in this game before is that Laura doesn't really seem to be very confrontational about things, and by that I mean she is literally unable to bring any of the knowledge that she has during the course of the evening to bear, except maybe at the very end, and even then that's sort of iffy. So for instance, let's say that we have just spied on Wilbur and Clarence talking about their racehorse scam in which they openly admitted to stealing $100,000, a little over $1 million in 2012, talk from Colonel Dijon. Let's go ahead and tell him about what we have seen. he could care less. He could care less about the $100,000. Really. You know what? Let's just go ahead and be very clear. Let's tell Henri that Rudy stole $100,000 from him. Oh, game doesn't understand stole. Well, sorry, Colonel. We did what we could. Okay, and rounding off after hours for today's Meet the Character session, I think we might as well go ahead and meet Gertrude Dijon, seeing as we won't really have much of an occasion to care about her after this update, as I'm sure you've seen. Gertrude Dijon is the in-law of Henri Dijon. She married Henri's brother at some point in time. He has since died, and she apparently was never close with Henri, not that anybody was, but remains a part of the will. She and her son and daughter, Rudy and Gloria, are probably the most cohesive unit in the game. They all seem to at least like each other to some extent. It's not clear to what extent they're close as a parent and child. Everybody's fairly independent in the game, but she seems to get along with them all right. Gertrude isn't so much based off of a particular actor as she is off of a popular archetype of actresses in the 1920s, one of which was the snobby elderly woman. The 1920s were sort of a time when people were reevaluating the ways that they saw other people and the ways they perceived society and that people should act. So, while a glamorous, dignified person probably would have been recognized as an authority figure, sort of a grande dame, before this, that role was increasingly challenged during the 20s. So this would have been understood as somebody in a comedy movie who would be the butt of a lot of jokes, or in a drama movie like this, who would probably be shown up in some way or receive a bad ending. And that more or less comes true, as she is the first victim of tonight. Now, this does bring up an interesting point. Gertie disappears right after we find her. We never see the struggle that does her in. And Laura isn't any kind of a trained physician, so when she says that she noticed Gertie had a broken neck, I'm not exactly sure what she means by that. Maybe it was very out of joint, and she was clearly able to see that it was a broken neck, or maybe she just assumed that. Remember that the Colonel's Bequest is based on Agatha Christie mysteries, so it is entirely possible, in many cases, not in all, that people who we think of as being dead, or we think might have been injured, it's possible that they actually are not, that Gertie might have been faking for some reason or another. I'm not saying that is true by any stretch of the imagination, but keep your minds open to the possibility. It would certainly explain the body's disappearance and the quickness with which she was apparently overpowered in her room and then disappeared. Alright, well that was Gertrude Dijon, the first victim, maybe, of the evening, and sort of snooty older woman. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you next time for more deaths, more Meet the Characters, and more quirks about the game.